So today's webinar will be presented by Noa Larroche. Ms. Noa Larroche, one of our senior consultants, extremely knowledgeable in the ways of the registration. She's guided quite a few organizations through this multi-step process and all the troubleshooting. So she is once again very knowledgeable, and she will be presenting for us today. If you have any questions for us throughout the presentation, please don't hesitate to use the question box. We will do our best to answer those at the end. Also, please note you can follow us on Twitter if you'd like to learn about funding opportunities as they come out, or watch previous webinars and presentations on our YouTube channel as well. Wonderful. So for those of you who are listening in today for the first time with the Freemind Group, really a couple of words on who we are, what we do, and how we help organizations secure non-dilutive funding. We are essentially a consulting firm. What we try to do is help our clients obtain as much money as possible from non-dilutive sources. In our case, that mainly spells into grants, contracts, primarily from the National Institutes of Health, NIH, Department of Defense, DoD. Could be other government agencies, NSF, CDC, FDA, BARDA, for example, and nonprofits we could also be targeting. We do this across the life sciences. We work with universities and medical centers and research institutes, hospitals, through industry, from small startups all the way to members of large pharmaceutical companies, both in the US, Europe. Been doing so for 14 years now, 35 full-time employees on staff, submit about 250 applications every single year for a roughly 400 large client base. Essentially, we go through a very systematic and strategic approach towards non-dilutive funding, where the purpose would be to help you, guide you through the process. Now, if Noah, please. Basically, we view ourselves as a tool. The idea would be to maximize your funding potential. How do we do this? First of all, we help with the strategy end of it. We help with identification of the most relevant funding opportunities. We carry out a strategic assessment for each one of your pipeline projects, understanding what stage of development they're at, and what are your R&D funding needs. We then link those funding needs, or rather our analysts would link those needs with available pockets of money. The initial outcome, and I do stress the word initial, is a list of funding, a list of opportunities, which is then translated into a multi-submission granting strategy. We also strategize per specific application how to maximize its chances for award, looking at the scope of work, budgetary issues, collaborators, subcontractors, consultants that you may need to bring on board in order to increase your chances for award. In the case of when we do help with the actual grant writing, this will be based on our comprehensive templates, knowledge base, expertise. Those templates are drafted based on the solicitation guidelines, as well as that expertise I mentioned. Any initial information the client is able to provide, we plug that in, send the information, or the templates rather, to the client, and from here on it is a ongoing feedback type process. We insert comments, edits, rewrite sections. We just keep sending it back till we feel the client gets it right. We do support also final contract negotiations. And once again, the purpose is really to maximize your efforts in this field, executing on a multi-submission granting strategy. That's Freemind in a nutshell. Once again, we do this across the life sciences in all fields of research. I believe we submit to almost all NIH institutes, and great success at that. At this time, I would like to pass the torch to Noa Larroche. She will be covering the registration aspect of today's webinar. And once again, feel free to ask any questions if you have any. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jan, for the introduction. So as he said, I'm a senior consultant with here at Freemind, and I'd like to present to you the registration guide. So this registration guide is something that might seem tedious to someone looking at it from the outside, but it is very precious to anyone struggling with government registrations. So the first question that comes with a registration guide is, what do I need to register to? There are many different grant opportunities and government contracts available out there. They're offered by a variety of different institutions, as Eyal mentioned, and they have one thing in common, which is great for us here, which is that they have 3 core registration portals. These are listed here. You can see SAM.gov, Grants.gov, and ERA Commons. Depending on what mechanism you're applying for, what institution you're approaching, you might have other registrations which require small login type accounts which don't need to be processed or approved downhill. These are created quickly and we're not going to cover. But keep in mind that they might exist. What we're going to cover here is the main 3 core registrations. So one question is, when should I apply for these? When should I register with these government portals? The answer is as soon as possible. When you start considering government money as a source of funding, it doesn't matter whether or not you're close or far to having identified what mechanism might be suitable for you. You cannot be harmed by starting the registration. It is not committal. You can register for everything and then not apply for any grants. They won't hold it against you. So I would recommend that the first step to anyone considering grant money to be registration. This will also allow you to be flexible in terms of what grants you can apply for, meaning if you find a mechanism that expires in 3 weeks, if you're already registered, then you have the flexibility to say, like, okay, I'm going to concentrate all my efforts on making a good application and not be concerned with whether or not I have enough time for registration. So that's a very big advantage in some situations. And another good side of it is not to be in a situation in which you have prepared a full application and because of unforeseen delays either on your side or on their side or any way it might be, being unable to submit on time. That is very frustrating and it happens more often than you would think. So the answer is do it as soon as possible. So here is an outline of registrations that are needed and the sequence of the registrations. The SAM.gov registration takes for the prerequisite to the Grants.gov registration. You can see that on the left-hand side. And in parallel, you can work on the ERA Commons registration. First, getting an assigning official account, which once approved allows you to create a PI account, a principal investigator account for your specific grant. So both of these registrations take more or less a few weeks, and the guideline is plan a month. Plan a month for everything from beginning to end. Be sure that you will not be caught with any problems in the end. I'm going to describe to you first ERA Commons. So ERA Commons is the longest, and it requires the least amount of work up front. That's why I recommend that you start with it. It can take 2 to 4 weeks to process. What you need in order to start the registration is essentially your organization's address, your DUNS number, and the contact information of any individual that you're going to assign roles to. So through this portal, you're going to create 2 accounts. Assigning official account, which will take several weeks to be approved. This is someone responsible for your company to government. And the second account is a principal investigator account. These accounts, you can create many of them. You should have 1 per, depending on how many grants you're applying to, and they can be created very easily. To give you an idea of what it looks like, I did a print screen here of the ERA Commons. On the top right-hand side, the Registered Grantee Organization button. So you would click on that. It will bring you to a detailed instruction of how to registration. Generally, people tend to skim over this. I just want to bring your attention to point number 3, which is the registration page. A lot of these are done. It's unusual to have to print it, sign it, and fax it in, so sometimes people omit this step. If you skip this, you're actually going to get a confirmation email, which you need to enter, and you're going to be sort of misled to believe that your registration is being processed, but it won't be. Until they've received the fax, they're not doing anything. So please keep in mind, once you've filled the information, print it and fax it. To give you an idea of the information you do need, here's what they are. So it's basic organizational information, essentially your name, your DUNS number, your address. And then the account information, all you need to create is basically the bottom left corner page, which is the principal signing official. The principal signing official has the authority to create PI accounts, which is essentially what you need, but you can also create an account administrator that has the same ability to create PI accounts. This account is optional. If you want to have a second person have this role within your company, then you're welcome to add this on. So once you fill this information, you click Save. It will give you a PDF version of what you need to print, sign, and fax in. So don't forget to do that. Once you've waited a few weeks and they've gotten back to you and your ERA Commons SO account has been approved, you can now move on and create a PI account. So I just want to show you what the creation of the PI account looks like. Once you log into the SO account, you're going to have this blue banner, which is your way to everything in that site. So you click on the admin button, circled in red here, then on accounts, then on manage accounts. This should lead you to the top half of the screen, which is the search. If you apply as a role and then on search, you should have a list of all the individuals within your company that have been registered in the past as PI. Under that list, you'll have Create Account button. If you click on that, you'll get to the second half of this screen. This is essentially everything you need to fill out to create a PI account. It's very short, and it's very easy. You just have to make sure that once you're done filling out the personal information and the roles, you click on the Add button on the bottom right side of the screen, and then on Save. This should prompt the ERA Commons website to the PI you've just assigned for him to accept the role you've assigned to him. And this should be the end of everything you need with ERA Commons. So this leads to the SAM.gov registration. The SAM.gov registration can take a little bit less time. It can have a processing time between 2 weeks. What you need for this is an up-to-date DUNS number, which is something you already needed for the ERA Commons. That takes about 4 to 5 days. You have to make sure the DUNS number is registered with up-to-date information that will be matched by the information you put on SAM.gov. If not, it will cause delays. You'll also have the MCAGE number. This is a NATO commercial and governmental entity. This can take 4 to 5 days to obtain. And for U.S. applicants, you'll need an employer ID number. These are generally part of normal incorporation information, so you should have that offhand. Now, another question is, who should be doing this registration? That the person assigned to do these registrations will be someone who is available to follow-ups, who's responsive. In case there's any future hurdles in the registration process, this needs to be someone that can be contacted, that can be active, and that we can work with. But it also needs to be someone who has incorporation information about your organization and about your financials. In the SAM.gov account, you're going to be getting all the financial information for the government entity to transfer funds to you were you to be granted the grant. So generally, we have sort of a cooperation between different people within the company, with the people actually performing the registration being closer to the grant writing process, and then collecting information here and there from anyone that might have it within the organization. That's certainly a good compromise. So once you're on SAM.gov, you have everything you need. You determine who's going to create the account. You just log in, click on Create User Account. This is the home page. Then you click on Create an Account under their Individual Account Details tab. So sorry, just going back 1 second, the information you need to create the user account is very superficial. It's essentially personal information about the person registering and account information, meaning your chosen username, your password, security questions, things like this. It's strictly a user account. It does not represent your organization. Once that's done, you log into your user account. You'll be prompted each time so far to accept the terms and conditions of SAM.gov, and then you have this main page. So the next thing you need to do is create, link your user account to your entity, to your company. So you have two options for this. You can either create a new registration for your entity, or you can migrate any old registration that you might have done in the past. So this first option I'm showing you is to create a new registration. So you just create a register/update entity, register new entity. This will give you all the information. It will invite you to fill out all the information required for a SAM.gov registration. These are split up in the 4 categories described: core data, assertions, representations and certifications, and points of contact. These are not necessarily self-explanatory, but they are sort of explained through the SAM.gov website, so generally people are able to make their way through the different sections without any problems. This is the alternative route. If you have submitted grant applications in the past, specifically prior to last summer, you've had a registration. You've registered to a system that was a system previous to SAM, which is called CCR, which is now referred to as a legacy system. So what you're going to need to do is to click on Manage My User Roles, Migrate Legacy System Account, click on CCR, and then enter the CCR email address which you had used when you created your CCR account several years ago. You have to keep in mind that when you're migrating your CCR information, for those of you who are familiar with it, it includes all the information about your corporation as it was several years ago and needs to be updated. Essentially, these accounts, once they're created, only last for 1 year, so any CCR account you migrate will be expired. So you'll be invited to go through all the registration information that was in your CCR account and verify it and say, okay, this is still up to date, this is still up to date, change whatever is necessary, and then you're going to have to go through this same processing time as if you're creating a new account. This does not save you any time. The migration itself takes maybe a few hours, and then you're still looking at 2 to 3 weeks processing time for the account being. Once you've submitted your SAM registration, you want to look at your registration status. How far along are you to getting an active account? So you can do that by using your user account to log into SAM.gov. You click on register/update entity. Incomplete registrations. You click on the entity on the name of your company. And in the registration details, you'll click on the little box you see on the bottom left of the screen. And here you can see the registration status says active. So that's great. But what if it doesn't say active? So the normal process for the registration approval is first IRS verification, which is linked to the tax ID number or the employer ID number which you provided. This can take a few days. It's only done for U.S. companies. And that's followed by a CAGE/NCAGE validation. It also takes a few days. It's done for international companies for NCAGE and for US-based companies for the CAGE number. And I'm giving you this detail just so you can see when you have a registration status that is not active, it'll generally indicate what stage you're at. So you'll either have pending IRS verification, this means you're in the beginning of it, or IRS verification approved, pending CAGE action. So you'll know how far along you are in the process. Once that is done, and once you've been approved at SAM.gov, you can move on to Grants.gov. Grants.gov is formally used to provide organizational representative account, and that again is necessary for essentially all grant solutions. This can be done between 24 days after the Gov account has been approved. It consists of, again, a user account, so that's very simple. You just go on Grants.gov, you click on register, click on organizational applicants, and fill out a little bit of personal information, your DUNS number. That's fairly straightforward, fairly easy. What there is, you're going to have to link this account, this new account, back to your SAM account, which is an account that represents this entity. So it is by approving your AOR account. Now, who approves your AOR account? This is something that is done by the eBiz point of contact. The eBiz contact is something in the SAM.gov registration. When you assigned him, you also, in parallel, created an MPIN number, chose an MPIN number. So you're going to need this at this point for the login. I'm going to show you in a second how you can get that. But once you log in as your eBiz point of contact, you're going to follow the following 6 steps. First is click on Manage Applicants, then on Search. You click on the desired username, meaning the AOR account you just created. Click on Reassign Roles, and then you move the Authorized Applicant tab from the right column to the left column. So from remaining roles to current roles. And you save the changes. Now you can go back and log into Grants.gov using your AOR account information, and you'll see that the status will have changed from pending approval to AOR approved. So that's essentially everything you need. I'm going to show you just in 1 second how to find your MPIN. This is the login page, so you can log in. You can see the applicant login and the business contact login. These are everything you need. But for your MPIN, like I said, is a code that you created when you registered at SAM.gov. You need it to be your password, your first password, your temporary password for eBiz point of contact account. And the way you can obtain it is by following the steps. I'm going to read through them. It's very similar to the different maneuvers we did in the past. So you click on Register/Update Entity. Then you click on Complete Registration for the Entity List. You click on your company name. Under Registration Details, you click on View. Under Entity Record, you click on Core Data. And once you've gotten this, it should be some category of information that you see in front of you. It's called Business and TIN Information. Your MPIN number is going to be listed as one of those. So you just copy and paste, log in, approve your AOR, and you're done with everything as far as registrations go. So it might seem a little bit overwhelming. Feel free to contact us. I think this should give you a very good idea of what needs to be done in order to register.
Well, thank you very much. That was fantastic.
So, you're welcome to...
Well, thank you very much. That was fantastic.
Thank you, yeah. No problem. Happy to help.
Great. I think the main take-home message here is definitely start early.
The main take-home message here is definitely
many last-minute applications, and registration has been tough. So definitely start the process as Noah urged you to with ample time to go through this process. If you have any questions at this time, you're welcome to ask those questions. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. You could try to catch us again, the rerun, if you want us to walk you through the registration. Just go online to our YouTube channel, pause it, play it, and then just go through the registration one by one. Today's video was about 20 minutes, whereas if you watch the tutorials on the SAM, they're about an hour long. So this is a little more direct and to the point. Once again, if there are any questions, you are welcome to ask those right now. Regardless, please feel free to contact us if you have any questions by email, by phone. Give us a call. We're always happy to help. If you want to talk about your signs, you want to talk about potential funding opportunities, that would be fantastic as well. And hope to see you next week. Most likely we'll be covering budgets and how to construct budgets, and we'll talk about the various forms of budgets and how to prepare these complex items. So let me just see if there are any questions here. Okay, if your organization. Okay, so there's a question regarding if your SBIR, if your DUNS number changes, if your organization DUNS number changes during the course of the application SBIR, can you change it? Do you mean if the registration is complete using a certain DUNS number, whereas you would like to complete the submission using a different DUNS number? Would that be the question? Okay. 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 So, okay, I understand. So it's complete with one number. Perhaps I'll pass the torch back to Noa if you have any input on this. If one can go ahead and change their DUNS number within the registration already completed, and whether you could edit that completed registration. Noa, if you have an answer, you're welcome to answer that. Just one moment. Okay.
This is this is a very specific question, which actually we've dealt with in the past. I believe the answer is always make sure with sam.gov what to do when you have a unique situation like that. You want to make sure that they're on board and that they have record of what you're doing and the decisions you're taking. Generally, I think it's important for the DUNS number in the application to match once the grant is awarded. I think changes in incorporation information also occur between the submission and the award of a grant are something delicate to deal with that you need to involve everyone on, and generally the understanding is that you're going to want to straighten everything before the grant is awarded. So my advice would be contact them, make sure that it's okay with them, whatever you choose to do is okay with them, but at the end of the day, the final information that you provide them before getting any monies from the government needs to be up to date.
Great. Thank you very much, Noa. That was, once again,
Does that help?
Fantastic. The individual has thanked us.
Great. Thank you very much, Noa. That was, once again.
I did get a question regarding slide decks. Yes, you will receive the recording as well as a slide deck of the presentation. As already mentioned several times, it will be online as well. Yes. Okay. Yes, and yes, please expect the slide decks in your email as well as a recording, and once again online as well. Once again, thank you very much for logging on. Please stay tuned for further webinars. We will be having additional webinars throughout the year, so you're always welcome to log on and tap our knowledge base. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much, and see you next week.